All right, welcome everybody to the SR 520 Portage Bay Bridge and Roanoke Lid Project's first monthly construction update meeting. My name is Alan Van and I will be kicking us off today. As you may have seen from my emails, I am the Public Information Manager for the Skanska team, and I'm happy to see such great attendance for our first meeting as we continue preparing for construction in our neighborhoods. Before I pass you off to my Skanska colleagues, I would like to walk through a few housekeeping items to help reduce background noise and improve everyone's experience. We ask that all participants write down and submit their questions and comments via the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you have a question about a specific topic or a slide, please make sure to reference that specific slide in your question that you submit. All questions will be visible to all attendees, so keep that in mind when submitting your comments. If your question involves something with sensitive information, such as your home address, personal contact information, email, phone number, etc., we ask that you send your question to our project inbox instead. We will plan to answer your questions at the end of the meeting, but please send your questions as they come up. We'll be tracking them in the background and making sure that we are developing answers as we move along. Our goal is to end the meeting around the planned end time at 6:30. So we may need to follow up with several individuals via email if we run out of time. Of course, we want to be as comprehensive as possible with the questions, so we may need to go over. For questions that do require a longer response, we may ask that you send an email to the project inbox to allow us to provide a more comprehensive written response to your question. And lastly, if any questions come up after the meeting, the outreach team is available via the project email address and the Portage Bay hotline. Without further ado, we'll dive into the agenda. Okay, perfect. So I'll start off with introductions and goals for the meeting. Then I'll pass it over to my colleague Robin to talk about the project schedule and what to expect during construction. Then we'll share how to best stay informed about the project, and we will begin responding to some of the questions we received. I want to first introduce some of the folks you may hear from during today's meeting. So next slide. We have Jerry Iniguez, project manager for Skanska, Carmela Chavez, also on the line as well, construction manager and mini transportation lead, Robin Clark, the community liaison, and then myself, the public information manager. Next slide, please. So our goal for this meeting is to provide you with the latest and greatest information we have about construction. So we want to make sure you folks know essentially what is planned for this year, including both daytime and nighttime construction. We'll also begin previewing some planned impacts on local streets, so we will have more information on those impacts in future meetings. So make sure that you're signed up for email updates to know when those future meetings occur. Lastly, as this is a new project under the SR 520 program, we want to make sure that you all know the methods, new and old, for how to stay in touch with us, and we'll touch on that at the very end. Now, I will pass it over to my colleague, Robin, to discuss construction.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Alan. As Alan mentioned, I'm Robin Clark. I'm the community liaison with Skanska and for the construction project. So I will be attending these meetings and you'll probably see my face quite a bit as the construction progresses. So I hope to get familiar with everybody that's in attendance today. And I appreciate you guys joining to hear more about our project because we're getting really excited to be here, getting excited to get started and work with you guys throughout this process. So I'll run you guys through our project schedule, some of our current progress, what to look for in the coming months, and then what to look for throughout the project. High-level overview on our project schedule. You can see on the yellow star that we are in the early stages of 2024 construction planning. Our first activity on the books is going to be our Portage Bay Bridge construction on the north side of SR 520. I'll show in a minute a graphic of our overall project. We're going to be building 2 new SR 520 bridge structures. And we will be removing the current SR 520 bridge. We're also going to be installing a new lid structure on the Roanoke side of the project that will be connecting the north and south neighborhood across SR 520. So right now we are in the design phase. We're design build contract. So we're contracted out to design the rest of the project that WashDOT has provided us. And we'll move into more of the heavy construction phases after about a year or two. We have some of these early construction phases to get access to our work areas, which I'll get into more detail here in a minute. And then I'll kind of highlight, we have other activities towards the latter part of our project, including the removal of the existing bridge, the construction of our South Portage Bay Bridge, the lid construction, and general landscaping and urban aesthetics. Something that we're also going to talk about today is going to be our pile driving seasons. I want to emphasize this because it is a big part of our project to gain access to some of those construction areas, and it is pretty impactful to the neighborhood, and it's going to cause a lot of noise and potential vibration.
Okay, sorry for the background noise if folks are hearing that. If anybody has any audio issues, please submit a question in the chat. We are relocating some of our microphones to limit background noise. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. All right, and what you see up here on the screen is our overall project map. So this is a high level view of what you're going to see at the very end of the project. Right now, we're again in the early phases, but at the end of construction in 2031, we will have the two new 520 bridges across Portage Bay. We'll have the SR 520 shared use path on the south side of that bridge structure. We'll have bike connections on the Montlake side and the Roanoke side, including the lid structure and new overpasses over 520. So what are we doing this year? I want to talk through a handful of our major construction activities beginning this November and kind of walk you guys through what we're expecting this year into early next year. We'll have more monthly construction meetings to talk about details in later years and later months as we get through construction, but we want to talk through right now what is going to happen in the immediate future. So starting in November, we will have crews focused on the following activities. Pile driving in Portage Bay that I mentioned earlier for this first season of pile driving construction. Barges that we're going to be utilizing for hauling material for our work trestle. We're going to be using the hauling and access route on East Lake Washington Boulevard, very similar to a previous construction and contractors, to access the WashDOT Peninsula Yard for staging. We're going to be starting some tree removal, clearing and grubbing around the Boyer Avenue East area and the hillside adjacent to SR 520. And then we're going to be continuing some lane closures and some flagging activities, a little bit of traffic impacts on primarily the west side of the project, but some on the east side of the project. Starting off with pile driving is one of our bigger activities. So I mentioned earlier that we're constructing the new SR 520 bridges. On the outside of those bridges, in order to construct the new bridges, we're going to have to build a temporary work trestle. This allows us to get our equipment in and out over the water and actually build the bridges. So we'll have to barge in all of this material and we'll be pile driving to put in temporary columns and eventually place crane mats and other material to create a deck and a platform to access the work. The pile driving for this season is scheduled to begin November 4th, and it'll run through the end of April next year. Pile driving occurs in these seasons from September to April, and it'll happen annually for the next 6 seasons, although we anticipate only 4 of those seasons will have heavy pile driving activity. We are going to be working at this time 6 days per week, which you can see down below on the slide, a schedule that will be working Monday through Friday, typically 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. with pile driving activities, and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. We do tentatively have some Sundays, but we are not scheduled on any at this time. We just have those essentially as a backup if we need to resume some additional operations for that week. As kind of a note with those seasons, we do anticipate having to conduct vibratory pile driving, which is non-impactful work. It's vibrating the piles to install them in the ground. And that is going to occur outside of that pile driving window from approximately April to September. It may also occur in that pile driving window, but I want to note that it does occur outside of the pile driving window because we will have construction activities throughout the year on that work trestle. The driving itself will only happen during that September to April timeframe. So getting into a little more detail with this first season, as I mentioned, we'll be focused on this first season, getting the main part of our trestle really into effect so we can start building the bridges. You'll see a graphic here. We're going to have 3 crews beginning on the trestle installation on November 4th. All 3 crews will be starting in one of these 2 locations, with one of the locations and one of the crews on the north side of the project, northeast side of the project, on kind of that east side there where the orange star is. And then the other 2 crews will be on the south side of the project, kind of in the center there where that second star is. The 2 crews on the south side will be working on in opposite directions towards the east and west sides of the project. And the crew on the north side will be working towards the west. These crews will both start, or all 3 of these crews will start in 2024, and then they'll be continuing through the season in 2025 to build out as much of the trestle as we can with pile driving in this season. And again, we'll continue with some vibration and vibratory pile install outside of that season, but the pile driving activities will end in April for this first season. Over the lifespan of this project, we'll be installing over 700 piles. This will be the busiest of those pile driving seasons, but we do expect 4 out of the 6 to be kind of those pile driving focused activities and seasons. As the piles are installed, you can see on the green there, that kind of highlights what that platform will look like for our equipment. We'll be installing that as we go, and that allows us to get material back and forth across the new alignment. So in all this process, we're going to be doing a lot of monitoring and a lot of communication with our teams, with our washout teams, with our crews on site, and with you guys in the community. It's really important for us to be monitoring vibration, and I'll get into this here shortly, the noise. For monitoring the construction vibration, I do want to note that pile driving may be located in different places, but sometimes the vibration can be heard across large areas. So we are going to have a lot of vibration monitors installed across the project. You can see a map of that on the slide here. These vibration monitors and the noise monitors that I'll get into here in a second are going to have real-time information that have warnings and alarms for thresholds that we are allowed to get up to but not go above. So for example, if we get close to a warning level, an alarm goes off with our system and we are asked to stop work and basically relook at our operation so that we can make changes and lower those levels of vibration so that we're not causing impacts outside of our work areas. If we hit the alert level of the threshold, we are asked to stop work, we cease activity, and we do not continue work until we can essentially remedy the situation, correct what is going on, and figure out a solution and best path forward. Similar to the vibration, we will be monitoring our noise very heavily. Both vibration and noise monitoring will be happening 24/7. The noise monitoring will primarily alert at nighttime hours, but it will be monitoring during the daytime. We'll be installing, again, the noise monitors across the project, and they will be providing that real-time information for us to be alerted when, when something hits a warning level and a threshold or exceedance level. So if we hit that warning level, we are asked to stop work, pause, relook at our operation, see if we can get those levels of noise down. If we hit that exceedance level, we're stopping work, we're revising our operation, or we're finding a different time to do that. So generally, there we go. Okay, sorry. What to expect with noise. So with all of this, I know we're getting pretty heavy into the detail, but I just want to make sure you guys are prepared for what's upcoming, and just make sure you guys are aware of what's going to be going on with our construction. As part of the noise for all of our construction activities, pile driving included, there are really 3 types of noise levels that you guys are going to expect on the job. We have our daytime construction, and we have 2 types of permitted nighttime construction. The first nighttime construction permitted is under a temporary noise variance, which I will explain here shortly. And the second is under our major public project construction noise variance, which is a mouthful. So I am going to reference it from here forward as the MPP-CNV. Both of those are permits that go through the SDCI, which is the Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections. They have to approve these in order for us to proceed with any night work. The daytime construction is going to be typical construction activities, some of what you guys have already experienced on other portions of the project, that include grading operations, and other wall building operations that will happen over the next 6.5, 7 years. Typically will be in that 85 decibel average, which if you look on the graphic there, it's if you set your blender at a level 3, that'll be the average noise. We don't expect that to be consistent every day for the next 7 years. We expect that to be periodic in different areas across our project, but we are going to communicate to the best of our ability what you guys can expect for that. Getting into the nighttime noise, most of our nighttime work will be under that major public project construction noise variance, which is essentially a blanketed noise variance that includes the majority of those daytime construction activities, but occurring at night. As I mentioned earlier with the noise monitoring, we are going to have the warning and alarm levels anytime we are working at night so that we stop operations if we are looking like we might exceed those. We also have heavier restrictions on our nighttime noise levels. If there is ever a time that we have to do work that requires impact, that is the exception for when we have to apply for a TNB. These are case-by-case basis, and they have to be applied separately of this MPP-CNV. We have to go out to the SDCI and ask if we can conduct this work during a certain short-term window of time, typically 1 week on average, and we're only allotted, I believe, 45 throughout the construction project as a whole. So those are going to be very limited, and they're typically only used in situations where we might have to conduct jackhammering under lane closure in order to protect our people from traffic. So a little bit more on nighttime construction noise. As you can see here, our MPP-CNV would cover the equipment delivery and staging, excavations, embankment paving, concrete sawing, and several other activities that might occur at night. Why we would schedule activities at night is typically for the safety of our people. If we have to conduct traffic closures, lane closures on SR 520 or on city streets that might otherwise not be approved during the day. We are trying to schedule the majority of our work during the day, but we will have nighttime work, and we'll be communicating that out to you guys as regularly as possible. Again, I'm going to emphasize that impact work is not allowed under this MPP-CNV, and we will apply for those separately with the Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections, and those are subject to their approval. Couple just notes on mitigation. We did talk about the noise variances quite a bit here. We do only have 45 of those, so those are limited over the course of the project. We'll be planning our work to keep those, again, limited as much as we can. Noise monitoring, we will continue to noise monitor throughout the duration of the project, 24/7. We'll be alerting our crews and educating them to make sure we don't hit any exceedances or just minimize what we can, because we know we're not perfect, but we are going to do the best that we can out here. And I want to note that accommodations are available. So every time we do have major nighttime noise work, we're going to be outreaching to neighbors near that work and that are within the zone that may be impacted. Our team is dedicated to reaching out to those folks, and you may be offered a hotel during that work to be able to temporarily relocate your stay, and that way you're less impacted by that nighttime noise. Couple other notes. Contacting us, we are available 24/7. So during any nighttime noise activities or just any construction activities, you can contact us at the number listed right there. We'll have it again at the end of this presentation. I do want to note that this is a new phone number for those of you that may have an old or previous phone number from other construction projects. This is a new phone number. So just make sure you have that noted if you need to get a hold of us in any capacity. And you can also reach out to our SR 520 email if you want to look into WashDOT's pilot program for noise mitigation. They may have some availability and you may be qualified if you want to look into that further. All right. Kind of segueing into a different topic because I've talked about noise quite a bit. Local street traffic. You guys have potentially seen us floating around a couple areas around the probably west side of the project recently. We've started up some small operations for potholing, geotechnical boring, and utility work. And we've been doing so under small flagging closures, lane closures, etc. We expect to continue this over the course of the next several months, and we'll be keeping those to those smaller operations of flagging and lane closures with the goal of keeping through traffic open as much as possible. At this time, we don't have any major road closures planned, but we will communicate out to folks if and when that comes. In general, over the course of the project, similar to the noise variances, we do have limitations on the number of closures, both City Street and SR 520 that we are allowed for the project. All right. Part of this traffic, you may see some increase from the last several months of hauling on Lake Washington Boulevard. I note that because it'll be similar to maybe what's been observed in the past. We will be mobilizing in there with some of our crews and our own equipment from the previous contractor to bring in very similar equipment, excavators, loaders, trailers with some material that we might stage for the short term in order to construct our trestle. Some of those activities will be occurring over the next several months. And then generally over the course of the project, we will be in use of that yard. And separately, but similarly, we will have some water traffic. With the pile driving, we have a staging yard up in Kenmore. It's our Lake Point yard. We are going to be staging the bulk of our trestle material at this yard, and we'll be barging it down to the project. Our barges will be used during the week, generally from 7 to 5, to bring all of this material back and forth. And on average, we'll have one barge making that trip twice a day, 3 times a day from the Lake Point site. That may increase or decrease throughout the week. One of the last topics I want to get into here is the upcoming tree and vegetation removal on the project. So one of our other major operations that's going to be happening this year is tree and vegetation removal. All of the orange highlighted areas that you see on the project are scheduled for some tree or vegetation removal in some capacity over the next probably year. And I'll get into some of the details. So starting again this November, probably mid to late November, we are looking at beginning this tree and vegetation removal. We are targeting in November to December the Boyer Avenue area and that hillside connecting up to Roanoke Street, as well as the east side of the project, kind of near the Bill Dawson Trail and Montlake Playfield. After that and into next year, we'll be targeting additional areas up by the west side of the project, Roanoke Street, and then we'll kind of target the areas you see in orange throughout the remainder of the project. Any of these planned removals have predated our contract, and they are through our tree and vegetation management plan. So I do want to emphasize that these have gone through several iterations of review and approval prior to us coming out here, including Section 106 consulting parties. The washout team has reviewed this as well. We update this for our shoreline permit and several other permits and approvals prior to getting out there and working. So what you guys can expect to start seeing, we had a certified arborist come out recently in the last month or two, and they started a tree inventory and survey to confirm all of the information that we were provided and essentially take inventory of all the trees in our construction limits. They've installed tree tags, which are the little silver tags that you can see in the picture on the left, and they have identified all of these individual trees, classified them, identified if they are healthy, in good condition, if they are a safety hazard, etc. And they've also just helped us kind of get a good assessment of what's going on out there. This tree inventory from the arborist is being facilitated into our design, and it's being confirmed for some of the tree removals and protections. So the next part in the process of all of these approvals for potential tree removal is that we will place a public notice, which you can see on the right picture, put a public notice for tree removal and replacement. We will, once we kind of get through this process of surveying and determining what we need to remove, we'll put these public notices up on all of the trees individually that will be removed on the project. Why are we doing that? We typically do that because it conflicts with our construction. So if for example, the lid or the SR 520 alignment conflicts with where a handful of trees are currently planted, then we'll unfortunately have to remove them in order to build the new bridge. Other examples might be for public safety, for just the general health and condition of the tree, or if something else arises that we need to discuss with other consulting parties. As part of the tree removal and as part of the design, with that tree survey and inventory, we provide that to our designers to incorporate the information into the overall project design. At the end of the day, we will have more trees out there than what there are currently today. What you can't see pictured is a similar graphic for the east side of the project, but what's right here on the west side is an example configuration of what you might see at the very final product for our project. All of the trees will be planted on the east and west sides of this area, including on the lid and along local streets and the I-5 corridor. So for all of these trees that we are removing, eventually we are going to be replacing them with native species, which we're targeting to kind of bring back some greenery, bring back what we're removing in those areas. All right. Well, again, I want to thank everybody for kind of listening to me today. This was my first monthly construction meeting, so I appreciate everybody bearing with me and kind of sticking with me and giving us some questions. Before I turn it over to Alan to help facilitate the Q&A, I do want to just highlight how to stay informed. Again, our Portage Bay Construction Hotline, you guys can call us at any time. It is a new hotline number, so please make sure you update it if you have numbers from previous projects. We also have our Construction Corner website where we'll be posting the recording and slides for this meeting, and where we also have updates about our project. We have our email updates, and we have periodic monthly meetings. So if you guys haven't signed up for our newsletters or signed up for these email updates, please let us know if you're having any difficulties or if you just want any more information. With that, I will pass it over to you, Alan. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Robin. Thank you for sharing all of that great construction information in the presentation. We know that for you folks online that was probably a lot of information to absorb. We know that questions are still rolling in. I see a couple right now in the queue. So thank you to those who had submitted them throughout the presentation. We are now entering the Q&A portion where we will be going over some of the questions that are in the chat and answering them live. A couple of folks have also submitted submitted questions that we had answered in the Q&A section as well. For some folks, we will be responding to via email, just with a couple more details. And for the other questions that are currently queued up, we will go ahead and read those out. As a reminder, for the folks who may have joined later in the meeting, as you submit questions, all questions are visible to all attendees. So make sure that you don't put any sensitive information in there that you wouldn't want these folks to know. And for questions that may require a longer response, or if you don't have time to get to your question for the 6:30 mark, we ask that you send an email to the project inbox. So if you identified some questions already that we would like to answer both via email and in person. So we will just go ahead and start with a couple of questions listed here. We're going to go in chronological order. If anybody has a specific slide that they want us to go back to as well, we can definitely do that for you. The first question that we have is from Greg Dupont. Your loud noise and vibration slide states that it will not occur at night. Do you plan to deviate from those hours? Dakota, could you go back to the nighttime work slide so folks can reference those hours? Just one moment while it pops back up.
And while he pulls that up, that is a great question. We will have nighttime work. We do anticipate that it will be noisy. We do not at this time plan to have any pile driving at night because that is not within our allowances unless we look to SDCI for a permit. We are potentially planning on some vibration activities if it doesn't exceed what's allowed within our thresholds for the nighttime hours. But I do want to make sure that folks know we are planning on nighttime activities over the construction duration. So we will have deviations. We will communicate out to you guys when we have that information available.
Great, thank you, Robin. And Pete, or Greg, sorry, if you have any follow-up questions regarding that answer, feel free to put them in the chat or go ahead and send us an email. Pete has a question. Will the work trestle be in place for 6.5 years? How many piles are expected?
Great question as well. The trestle will be in place for about that time. I would say the 6th season. So probably after about 5.5, 6 years, we will be removing the trestle. So we'll have it in place for almost 5.5 years, maybe 6 years there. And we're expected to install over 700 piles, though I don't have the exact number.
Great, thanks, Robin. One more question from Greg. Will there be access beneath the work bridges for boats that dock on South Portage Bay for residents there?
Yes, we will maintain 24/7 access through at least one channel under the work bridge at all times. If there are any deviations from this, we will have somebody on site in work skiff or boat to be able to help facilitate that boat traffic. But that would be very limited, and it would also be subject to coordination with folks, both a part of this meeting and with WashDOT.
And one additional resource that I'd like to point out for you, on in the green box on the slide, we have a call out to our online open house. We do have a section dedicated to boater safety, and we do have some diagrams showing what that access will look like. So please visit engage.washdot.wa.gov to visit the online open house. And there we have plenty of resources, not just boater safety, but we also have some information about pile driving and vibration hammering as well, and tons of other great information that we didn't cover today. The next question from Keith Faraday. Is it pile driving every day or just for short periods? How many piles and how long to drive each pile might be helpful?
I'm gonna phone a friend on this one. My resident expert, Carmelo Chavez, is potentially gonna help me fill in here, but I'll give it a bit of a shot here. We are expecting to pile drive most days. It may not be every day if we elect to do some vibration, or if we have to take a pause for trestle work installation or other activities related to the trestle. And then for the pile driving itself, I believe that will be happening typically from 7 a.m. to maybe 5 to 7 in the evening, and then some of the later hours might be when the crews are demobilizing, or they might be doing some just finishing work once the pile driving has completed for that day. So we do expect that to happen throughout most of the day, but Carmela, I may let you jump in if you have anything else that you could add to that.
No, you covered it well. We're gonna be driving pile. I would plan on every day. It's gonna take multiple headings to get the work bridge built for our access, so we can count on crews building pile, driving pile every day, right around. We're targeting 8 pile per day, so it's gonna be pretty continuous throughout our day shifts. And like Robin said, once they stop driving, then they'll start building superstructure, which will give some relief, but it's gonna be pretty continuous daily.
Great, thanks, Carmelo. And again, on the online open house, we do have some videos of what that looks like, and some of the mitigation efforts for doing or completing some pile work in water. So definitely check out those videos to get a better understanding of what that's going to look like and what that might potentially sound like as well. Our next question from Pete Delaney. Can you describe what the circular structure is at the water side of Boyer Avenue, south of the bridge? Could you pull up the map later in the presentation?
Actually, yeah, the project.
Oh yeah, no, sorry, go back to the beginning. Yep, the project overview now.
Yes. So it's that call out right there where Dakota has his maps pointed at. It's the right hand yellow call out on the new bike and pedestrian connections there, I believe is the question. That is actually going to be a we call it a corkscrew right now for colloquial term, but it's a little ramp that's going to be connecting the lid, which is going to be elevated above the 520 bridge and connection. And then we'll have that kind of corkscrew shaped ramp that will bring pedestrians and bikers down to the 520 level and connect to the shared use path on 520 across Portage Bay. So it's a bit of a ramp right there.
Great, thank you, Robin. A question from Chris. What are projected shutdowns of the existing 520 for construction?
We do have projected shutdowns. I do not have the number off the top of my head, but I can follow up with our allowed number of closures. We are allowed certain weekend and nighttime closures over the course of the project. However, the primary phasing of this whole project is planned in such a way that we are aiming to maintain traffic flow for the duration of this project. So while there might be closures here and there so that we can shift traffic or conduct other operations, we are not doing any long-term closures of SR 520 in order to remove or construct the new bridges. And we can get into this as a topic for the next monthly construction meeting. Or we have some more information on our construction open house page. But we are phasing the new infrastructure building so that we can shift traffic onto new infrastructure and maintain two directional flow at all times.
Okay, next comment actually from Pete Faraday. Sampling and drilling has caused deep potholes at the top of 10th Avenue East and Delmar Drive East, which are quite deep and not sufficiently filled. I believe those are being filled this week.
Yes, we have had some drilling and sampling there this week. I will make that as a personal action item to contact that team and make sure they're adequately addressed.
For the next question from Keith, how many of the existing trees have been tagged so far, and when will the initial tags be visible?
Yeah. For sake of answering this question, I'll say tag versus placard. The tags being the small silver tags that were in the photo. I believe Dakota will pull that up shortly. And then the placards being the large posters that say whether or not a tree is scheduled to be removed or protected. The trees have all been tagged thus far. I want to say we have tagged and identified around 12 to 1300 trees off the top of my head. And then the placards we have not posted yet. We're working on a bit more messaging that we want to provide to community members who haven't been able to make it to this meeting before we start posting those placards. So on that the photo on your right hand side with the yellow placard, those will come out probably in the next week or two once we get more messaging out to folks in the neighborhood.
And just one thing to add to that as well. In addition to the placard that's shown on the right-hand side of the screen, there's also a protection permit as well. So if you folks are walking around your neighborhoods and you see these types of papers posted on trees, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are all going to be removed. So just keep that in mind as you are traveling your neighborhood. Pay attention to the specific language that's on there. And as Robin has said, these removals will be posted 30 days in advance before any action is taken. The next comment is from Keith, just a useful resource for neighbors. Thank you for sharing that, Keith. And then for Christine has a question. How many trees will be coming down? What is the number of replacements and how big and tall will the replacements be?
For that one, I'll have to get back to you on a better answer so I can get you an accurate number on how many will be coming down versus replaced. How big and tall will the replacements be? Initially, they will be on the smaller side with planting. We'll get some youth aged trees that will be planting on the lid and on the corridor stretches of landscape areas. But they will be a variety of native species that we're identifying across the project, and they will eventually grow into larger trees. I don't have, again, those particular sizes and heights, but I can get back to you on some of those.
And at the bottom of the slide as well, we also reference the Tree and Vegetation Management Protection Plan, the TVMPP, as we call it, that is posted on our construction corner. There is some more information in there regarding the types of vegetation and trees that are going to be planted in each of those different areas that we highlighted earlier. So if you're curious to learn more, definitely check out the later parts of that plan. There's a lot of great information in there for you. Question from Greg. You said that there will be overnight accommodations for residents that cannot sleep through your noise. In past experience, WashDOT has declined to offer that. What do we do if nighttime noise is excessive and at say 1 a.m. the workers tell us too bad, we have a variance?
A good question as well. I will say we'll probably address this on a case by case basis. We are offering the hotel overnight accommodation, so we are not declining the offers for those. We are targeting, again, folks in the radius of those impact and noisy operations. But I will say, if you do find yourself in a situation where it is noisy and you have not been offered the hotel accommodation, you can call our hotline and we can work through some of these issues if that scenario arises. I don't have a specific at this time example for that, but I can follow up on that.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, the outreach team is available 24/7. We have a direct line to the construction team. For folks who are in the general vicinity of where noisy work is going to be happening or work that's going to require a temporary noise variance, all of those people within a certain area of that work will be receiving either a flyer or an email or some sort of notification letting them know that they are that we are offering hotel accommodations for them. So we'll be launching a pretty simple form over the course of the next couple of weeks as TNV work might start, but just be on the lookout for some communications from the outreach team being proactive with offering those accommodations to you. We have a couple of questions regarding the tree tags. So a question from Jim. I've noticed these silver tree tags on several trees toward the south end of Roanoke Park. Are there any plans to remove any trees from within the Roanoke Park Historic District, essentially the land to the north of Roanoke Street?
At this time, I do not believe we have any plans to remove those trees. If we do make any changes to that, as I mentioned before, we'll have to go through a reapproval process and a permit update for that. But at this time, we don't have any plans for that.
Great, thank you, Rob. A question from David Scott. Do you have any idea when you'll be ready to talk in more detail about the design of the temporary overpass over 520?
We can add that as a topic for an upcoming monthly construction meeting. That would be a great topic to talk about. We have a decent amount of detail on that design. I know we've received a lot of comments and really good feedback from the community regarding some of the interfacing with traffic versus pedestrian and biker access when that temporary overpass is constructed. So that is something that we are still looking into. And so that conversation may be a little bit further down the line as we go through the development of those plans. But we can still go through that as a topic for our monthly meeting.
And just to build on top of that too, in the same vein as getting topics for future meetings, if anybody is particularly curious about specific design elements or the constructability of certain parts of the project, feel free to send us an email. We're always happy to hear what folks are interested in to help inform what these monthly meetings are going to entail. The next question we have from Jennifer. With the removal of the staircase on the north side of 520 from Delmar to Boyer, or the Boyer Stairs, it's been indicated that pedestrians will be redirected up and down the hill of the 2600 block of 11th. Let's see. Jennifer, we may want to respond via email to this, we'll make note of this comment that you have, but just given the length of it, we'll go ahead and send you an email with a response if that is okay. A couple of other questions coming in.
Actually, I do want to pause just
Okay.
to, not to jump over that one, but to further what you just said, we'll do some research into that, Jennifer, to make sure that we're coordinating with some of those additional agencies and some of those other projects that are going on. We are aware that there are other projects planned in our vicinity. We're going to be outreaching and trying to coordinate with those to make sure our plans don't conflict that with them. But I certainly agree. We want to make sure that any pedestrian detours or any pedestrian impacts, we're not sending folks into a work area of some other project, and we're not sending folks into an unsafe area. So I just want to emphasize that and reiterate what Alan said. We will look into this one and get back to you.
We have a question from Carl. Can you be more specific about the vibration limits allowed at the Boyer 520 area?
I can, I think that one may be better answered via email, just so I can provide the actual limits of what we're allowed. Because if I would quote you off the top of my head, I'll be wrong. There's some pretty specific limits based on studies that WashDOT conducted prior to our project and that we've applied to what we've got going on here. So we can provide that as a response, that information.
Yeah, we'll track that as one of our additional follow-ups. Keith has an additional question regarding the trees again. So sorry, one more question about tree removal along Roanoke. I read that Seattle Public Utilities has a project linked to this project, moving the power lines underground and also a water line relocation. If those impact the trees along the park, would this construction form alert us, or is the city doing that separately?
I don't know if the city is doing a separate item, but any tree removal linked to our project will be facilitated through us unless the Seattle utilities decide to remove something on their own, but we are clearing and removing the tree and vegetation ahead of those water lines and relocations. I had Dakota here go to this slide specifically because the highlighted area for November 2024 Boyer Avenue is one of those areas that you're mentioning for the 42-inch utilities and the water line relocation. We have a 26 kV relocation, sorry, that we'll be conducting on that hillside. So that's one of our target areas for the tree removals. Anything outside of that or any changes to our plans will be alerting folks in this community.
Yeah, so those alerts may be in the form of an email update. We are planning to talk a little bit more in detail about the Seattle City Light electrical utility relocation at one of our future meetings. So we'll go ahead and keep you folks in the loop. Make sure to sign up for our email updates to know when that topic is going to come up. Let's see. Greg, I do see your question regarding the Boyer stairs. I think we'll go ahead and take that to email. Also be on the lookout for an email from us over the course of the next couple of days. Robin, is there anything that you want to touch on at this moment?
I think we might be able to answer that one. Will you go to the first project overview? And Greg, I apologize if I'm misreading the question, but I believe the question is, the permit requires the structures destroyed or removed will be replaced. So the question is, will the historic stairway be replaced? It doesn't quite show it on this graphic. Actually, I wonder, does it show it on the ladder slide with the tree replacement? It might show it on that one. Apologies, folks. I think that one may show our intent for the final configuration of the project. Yeah, so it's a bit hard to see there, but where Dakota's mouse is right there, we are intending to put back a new staircase connection. So we are replacing that in a sense.
Great, thanks, Robin. That brings us to the end of the questions that have been submitted thus far. We'll go ahead and just let it linger for a minute in case additional questions come in. Let's see. Jennifer, I see your question about camping under the bridge.
For all of our construction areas, we'll be fencing those off with our own construction chain link fence, securing those areas. We're also having subcontractors help us with some relocation efforts and cleanup efforts in these areas. So we are looking to secure our work zones in order to deter any additional folks from entering the site that aren't construction personnel. And not only for the camping, but to also protect the public interface.
Are there going to be any permanent structures to deter long-term camping or a long-term plan to deter camping?
This I do not know the answer to. I will have to follow up on this one.
Okay. We'll add that to our list of tracking items, Jennifer, and we will get back to you.
Likewise, Greg, and thank you to everybody online. We'll continue to stay on here for a couple additional minutes. I do want to note, right now, this again is our first meeting here. We picked kind of this 5:30 to 6:30 timeframe based on some other construction projects that have had similar times in the past. But we are open to your feedback if we need to adjust that slightly to maybe a 5 to 6 or a little bit later, or we can do an earlier in the day if it's like a lunchtime call. So we are open to that. Again, you can reach out to us via the email or other contact method if you'd like to provide some feedback on the time frame. And then just on behalf of the Skanska team, we'll be around for quite some time. We'll be your new neighbors. So I just really appreciate you guys listening in and providing us with your questions. Our goal here is to communicate with you guys and make sure you guys are in the know as much as we are. And yeah, just keep talking to us.
Yeah, the conversation does not end at 6:30 on October 15th. We
No.
are available 24/7 via the hotline and also always at the project inbox as well. So if any questions come up later on, maybe you're stewing over something over dinner and you're like, I really wish I would have asked that. You have opportunities to do that. You don't need to wait until the next monthly construction update meeting in November. We are currently finding a date for that right now. We're aiming towards early to mid-November at this point, but we will be sharing more specific details in the coming weeks. But other than that, we are at 6:31. If there are additional questions that come in, feel free to email those over to us. Otherwise, we will be seeing you folks in a couple of weeks from now.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.